Good. All right, 6:15, we'll call the meeting to order. Did everybody get a chance to review the minutes?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for last month.
I will
Or not
second
last
that.
month, but November, I guess. since-
November.
Correct.
Yep.
And I'll second that.
All in favor?
Did we get the Zoom people?
Mari and Ellen, are y'all in favor of approving the minutes?
Yes.
Perfect. Moving on, Carl, financial?
Yep. Financial report's the same as it always is, since there was no activity last month. So bank balance is about 61,263, just a little bit of interest income last month. That's it.
Number 4, old business. Update on the signs. Ms. Janet?
So Bill was going to speak with.
You make sure, hey, Janet, you need to talk to the microphone so everybody can hear you. Yep.
So Bill was going to talk to one of the property owners, and as you know, you guys know he resigned, so I'm not sure if he was able to speak to that person or not, and I'm certainly happy to send up a follow email to him about that. And then Mari spoke to the other property owner, and I'll give you guys some feedback on that. It involves, and I'll need to talk to Tom about that as well, but they have both been, or the one property owner Mari spoke to, and that is Westview Baptist Church.
That was the original location?
Correct.
Okay. As a backup, did you get the email I sent you with the one going down a little bit farther on South Carroll?
I don't think it'll work.
Okay.
And there is a at Julie's location as well. There is a dip, and there's not enough room between the dip and the hill that goes up, so there's not enough space to put a sign there.
And there's a random sidewalk that connects to nothing?
Correct.
All right. Any other further updates? Moving on to new business. Mr. Barber?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I understand you'd like to know a little bit about the status of the TAD.
Since the board was instrumental in creating the TAD, I figured now that stuff is happening, it'd be good for all of us to have an appreciation for where we are.
Okay. So years ago, the TAD started, before it was a TAD, as a golf cart path, as I understand it. And then somewhere it evolved into a road. And then things happened. So we started talking about the TAD. We did the walking trail study with Path Foundation, and then Arbor Valley rolled around, which is the apartment complex guy. And I have no recollection of the chronology of those, but all of those events sort of got us to a couple of years ago. And we set the boundaries for the TAD, and then we increased the boundaries of the DDA to include all of the TAD so that y'all would have a voice in what happened. Then we did the vote to support the bond issue of the apartment complex, and we agreed to do the land swap. So all that, you know, sort of got us to a couple of years ago. And then I'm going to start trying to put some dates on this because I should be able to remember some of this newer stuff. we started meeting with the school board staff first. No, we met with the board first. Chris and I went and met with the board in 18 before he left. So we've been talking to the school board probably 3 years, you know, like informally, because I was doing an annual update with the school board on the growth of the whole city, and then it, you know, and then it occasionally included things about the TAD, and then we started having meetings just about the TAD. So we've done that some. We met with the school staff a couple of times, me and the mayor. I spoke to the board one time with Sarah and Miss Shirley, and then we get to this year. So this year's when things sort of changed. So Arbor Valley, the apartment guys, started getting closer to getting their HUD financing because they're doing a 4% tax credit deal on their apartments. And so they started getting closer to that, and then Fuquay showed up. And that, I think that happened in April. So we met with them the first time at the library, and honestly, as the guy spoke, I couldn't believe that he was in Villa Rica. I thought, you've lost your mind. Because I know his properties. My daughter, I have 2 daughters that live in Atlanta. So for us to go to something that's in a Fuquay development is like a normal thing, right? Whether it's at Lindbergh or at Memorial and I-20, or, I mean, who doesn't go to a Braves game and enjoy something at the Battery? He built all the Battery, and on and on and on, you know. So I'm sitting there listening to this guy, and he's talking about, you know, building retail with residential and bringing in another grocer, and I'm thinking, you know, like, what, did you run out of places to go build stuff? I mean, like, what happened? And as it turned out, the single biggest thing that has changed is work at home. And even though this was April of 21, that had been going on since about August of 20. It's really when I first started saying to people, man, somebody like rang the dinner bell and said, time to go to Villa Rica. And it started with townhomes, and then it picked up some apartment developers, and then it started picking up some residential developers. And that's what the guys were all telling me is, because you can work at home now, you can live in Villa Rica, cheaper housing potentially, more land potentially, both potentially. And if you're not making a 5-day commute to Atlanta, you know, you can make this cost quality of life calculation that makes sense. And so that's why these guys are coming out. The way that Jeff got here, though, wasn't because of that. Jeff wound up here because one of his regular grocer customers went to him and said, hey, we want to be in Villa Rica. And we still don't know who that is, but that's what started Fuquay in Villa Rica, was the grocer. So the gross, and I'm not sure exactly how the order of this either, but you know, there's a broker for the landowner, and then the city and the landowner have been talking about the TAD probably for 2 years, right? And so it wasn't the TAD as much as it was the road, right? Fuquay needed the road to downtown. And so the thing that I think made Villa Rica more attractive in the big picture, other than I-20 obviously, is work at home. But the thing that brought Jeff in particular was the combination of the grocer wanting him to be in Villa Rica and us doing the TAD and the road, the idea of hooking Mirror Lake to downtown. So that's sort of what got us here. D, who is the development guy for the apartments, did his closing last week. So he's owned the land for some time, but he's got his finances closed, and I understand the land swap is completed. So he's ready to go, and his engineering is done. He's had his LDP through the winter, which is his land disturbance permit, lets him go grade. And so I'm thinking that in 1st of March, when the weather breaks, he's going to start taking down trees. Jeff, on the other hand, is still doing design, and what he is designing is a strip similar in shape to Publix, right? So a grocer with adjacent bays, and then out parcels in the front, right? All the way down, not only to the traffic light at Shoreline, but one parcel beyond that. So in addition to what's in the TAD, he has also bought the first house, right, which is about a 5-acre lot. There's 2 of them that sit side by side on the north edge of Jeff's property. He bought the first one so that he'll have a second pin corner, right? So at that red light, he'll have the north and the south corner on the west side. And my understanding is we're going to get a gas station there. And then we'll have out parcels in the front, and then a grocer with bays. To the south of that, between the grocer and McNeilus, the grocer and the water tank, the grocer and Waffle House, right, is going to be the apartment complex. And then to the north and the west, so behind the grocer and to the north of the grocer on both sides of the road will be townhomes. So 200 units, 255 townhomes. Jeff is going to build and own the retail. He's going to build and own the apartment, and he's going to develop only the townhomes, and then a townhome developer is going to actually build them and own them, or build them and sell them. The sort of sobering part of this, the real sobering part, is that Jeff's lease is going to say that if we don't have the road built, that his tenants don't owe him anything. So to say that he is interested in the development of the road would be a little bit of an understatement. And what we've agreed to do because of that is for him to build the road from Cleghorn to Shoreline, and for us to build it from Cleghorn back to here, to North Carroll. So that's the plan right now. And we are still working with an engineer and some other guys trying to decide the best route, but we have to have a road built in 20 months, which is no small feat given the topo back there in the water. But we're trying to make sure that we've thought of every possible route. We initially were just focused on minimizing the dislocation of people, right, because you're going through a neighborhood. But the bigger issue is clearly the topo, because we want the entire length of this thing to be adjoining a walking trail and a golf cart path, 2 separate pieces of asphalt. And it can't be ADA if we do what we want to do, right? Which is just straight ahead, shortest distance, cheapest route. No, it's just big drop off, crosses water, climbs real bad. So, you know, it wouldn't meet those slope requirements. So we're working on that, trying to figure out what's the best plan B, C, D, E, F, whatever. I don't know which one we're on, but we've looked at a whole lot of possibilities that we don't like. And then we have the north and the south nodes. So if you remember what the map looked like, the TAD goes all the way up to Old Stone below the hospital in Steve Adams's new building. And it sits south behind Olive Tree. and to the east of the Avante building. So I'll start with the north node. So the north node is, I want to say 65 acres. It slopes off pretty steeply to the east. If you know your Villa Rica geography, there's two little roads off of the south side of Old Stone. It sort of runs up against that. That's, I think, Nugget Drive and Gold Drive or something, original. And then it backs up against the back of what we call Stonehenge, which is Parkway Circle, across from Chadwick Place, right? There's a neighborhood, just a one loop deal with a couple of cul-de-sacs. It backs up to that, and there's a creek there that sort of separates the two. So that's that piece. It was owned by Ray Lynn, which is the real estate arm of Hughes Ray Construction Company, and they have it under contract with somebody. So they've got a buyer who is a developer only. And now that we've gotten involved with the school, and we know what the school wants, we're trying to develop that as a 55 and up age targeted development to minimize school impact. And so in order to facilitate that, we have brought in a builder that has a division that just does that, and we've hooked them up, and we're trying to get them to work a deal. And then on the south side, that is really difficult land. It's been vacant next to our city downtown for a reason, multiple reasons. And so we're working with a potential developer there. It's not very far along. It's clearly not their first priority. They got other developments they're working on, but it could be great, and we'll see what happens. So now we have a timing issue, and the timing issue is the apartment isn't dependent on the TAD, but Jeff is dependent on the TAD. So he is sort of setting the schedule for the TAD now, right? Because he's got to have the road to get his rent. Well, I want to wait as long as I can to go to the bond market to have the most development in hand that I can, because the more development agreements I have, the more bonds I can issue and the more road I can build. So that's sort of my catch-22. And I don't know how that's going to turn out, but the north node in particular would really make a difference to the whole TAD if it could be in the original bond issue. One thing that I've learned recently that I did not know is I have been put in contact with an outfit that buys TAD bonds. If you can imagine that that's actually a thing, somebody that does that for a living, a company. So I have met with them, and I explained to them sort of my quandary, and they said, "Oh, no problem." He said, "If we know up front that we're going to issue bonds and then issue bonds and then issue bonds as you find development for the TAD, then we can just write the original that way, and it minimizes that incremental cost so that you're not paying a full bond issuance fee every time you draw money." I didn't know that was a thing. We'll look at that. I'm not sure that fits with what we want to do, but at least, that's an option. Another thing that we're looking at, if we do the north node, is building a road from Anderson up to Old Stone through the middle of that development. If we do the south node, we would want to try to build a road through that development, the edge of that development, from Olive Tree over to Cleghorn. And what that will give us is a little network that gives us connectivity and options. We're also in the process of designing and building an upgrade to the street and the water line on Cleghorn and Anderson. So we're going to rebuild the road, we're going to put in a new 10-inch water line, and we're going to put in a sidewalk on Cleghorn and Anderson. And what that's going to do, if you can envision that, that's sort of the hook in the middle of the neighborhood. The new road's going to cross it at a roundabout, and that way we'll have the railroad side of downtown water connected over to North Avenue, and the next water project we're doing is a North Avenue water line upgrade. So that'll give us connectivity, right, sort of in an H shape. And when we do that, we'll have North Avenue connected north and south to big lines, one in downtown and one up on 61 near the hospital. So you can see we're trying to kill multiple birds with one stone, with the road, the north-south connectivity, the water line, volume and pressure, handling the new growth, right? You got, y'all see all that. So anyway, so we're working on that. We're already in the middle of the only sewer project that we're going to do pre-TAD, which is right at the Cleghorn lift station. So that one's already going on. Let me think what else is on the table over there. Oh, Pumpkintown. So Pumpkintown needs a safety improvement, right? And because of Fuquay, we need an intersection improvement. So we need a signalization upgrade because we're going to do a left turn lane into the new development, decel lane, right turn into, So we're going to have to redo all that. Well, we allocated Carroll County SPLOST money for Pumpkintown, right, to do all that. Another thing that we wanted to see was we wanted to see connectivity to the new bypass. And so we went out and we found another group of guys, investors, builders, and they are in the process of working on the land acquisition in that top right corner of Pumpkintown at 61 near the new roundabout. So if you can picture where the big roundabout's going to be at the end of the bypass and the current little bitty roundabout, the land in between there is what we're talking about. So they're working on that. That's pretty exciting. And what that would do is that would allow us to have some options about how we move traffic now from South Paulden down to Liberty Road interchange. Because right now, even with the roundabout, that's still a lot of volume, that comes through there twice a day. So that give us a little bit of flexibility. The other thing that's going on up there is the North Bypass. So believe it or not, that time is almost here. April of 22 is the bid date. It is supposed to go to GDOT certification on February the 4th, which is just a short time from now, next week, I guess. Is that true?
2 weeks.
2 weeks? 2 weeks. And the last two things that we had to deal with were an update to the archaeological review and a final resolution of our request for utility aid, because we have to relocate a bunch of utilities. So we've gotten those two nailed down, and I'm hoping that we're going into bid and that 3 years from now we're going to do a ribbon cutting. Believe it or not. Being a doubting Thomas, I'll believe it when I see it, but we're getting there as far as I can tell. If we get the North Bypass, we're going to have a whole nother set of decisions to make, because honestly, I have spent all of my time thinking about this TAD and the South Side development on 61, and I haven't spent probably 30 really good minutes thinking about what's the north bypass going to be when it grows up. Like, and nobody talks to me about it, so I don't have any ideas. I don't know what we're going to do up there, but it could become industrial. It could be commercial retail. It could be mixed-use residential, a mix of residential and commercial. I mean, I think all the options are probably on the table. There's only 4 property owners up there. So Ingalls owns the first piece, the city owns the second piece, John Wayne Sauls owns the third set of parcels, and then Gary Talent around the nursing home owns the fourth, and that's it. That's the whole road. And then on the far west end, across the street, which would be across from the road and across from Reed Plantation, there's a vacant parcel that sits across the street from Gold Dust Park, if you can picture that. So that really, you could say that there's 5 things that might be in play. And then we also own the Fullerville Soccer Park, which is adjacent to all this, and is, if you think about it in development terms, that's a pad-ready site, right? It's got water and sewer, it's on the road, it's flat. So it's got some redevelopment potential if we wanted to do that. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We also are going to try to put the walking trail in there. So if you have a really good memory, you'll recall that we authorized a box culvert under the bypass specifically so that we could run the walking trail from the south side of the bypass to the north side so that we could get to Reed Plantation, right? So that people could get on the walking trail without having to either cross the bypass with all the trucks or cross 101, right, with all that commuter traffic. So that's still in play. So that's my off the top of the head where we are. So what's on your mind? What you got?
About the topo for the so-called Mirror Lake connector on this side of Fuqua's traffic circle, is bridging a fiscally feasible option
Not
to combat the
Yeah,
rapid changes?
Not that I know of, but I mean, we've at least had the conversation, and if that turns out to be the best, whatever the best is, then I mean, nothing. We're not eliminating any possibilities.
Are you talking about bridging road and pedestrian, or just pedestrian?
Well, just because there's huge drop-offs and inclines and water, and so rather than do a circuitous route, a straighter route, but with a bridge, keeps the ADA compliance piece, or
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking. With ADA considered, if you're just talking about a walking path, I'm sure that's a little less money than building a true
Have an
car
elevated
road.
walking
Yeah,
path.
correct. What's the real, I know you're trying to push as long as you can for the bonds, but what's a realistic build time on a road in normal circumstances?
I don't know, but I have to have it done by like the end of the summer of 23.
and that includes
So I don't have-
acquisition, which is probably the hardest part.
Engineering. Yeah, we're going to be doing engineering and land acquisition, easement acquisition all at the same time. Yeah, it's going to be pretty busy.
Okay.
What else?
We good?
I have a question regarding the potential like walking path that would go from Reed Plantation.
Maury, can you hear us?
Can you hear us now? No.
Can you do something about technology too while you're at it?
What did her question start out as?
The walking path near
Something about the walking
replantation.
path.
Yeah. Maury, can you hear me?
Can you hear us?
What's it say in the bottom left corner of hers? Just her name?
I'm gonna put you on speaker. We
Yeah,
can't
it just says Marcel.
Can we not put you on speakerphone and let you ask the question? Okay. Go ahead.
What was the end of that? Something about 101.
Repeat the end of that with a floor bill.
Yeah, the trailhead that we built is adjacent to the soccer fields and was intended to use the old rail bed that runs north from there up to where the bypass will be. Yeah, the other part of the walking trail that's difficult is what happens when we get right here. And one of the sort of conceptual problems with the whole project is that when we do an event, we close North Carroll. So we're talking about making North Carroll the main artery in the downtown and closing it intermittently. That doesn't sound like the best plan that I ever heard. So we're thinking that through as we do this.
Thank you.
Yeah, good information.
Yep. Now get back to work. You got a lot to do. Thanks, Tom.
All right, moving on, secretary replacement discussion.
So, as you guys know, Tracy resigned as well, so we need to think of some ideas. I'm trying to think of some folks that would be a good replacement for her. We're not replacing her technically, she's hard to replace, but somebody to come in and do that job. So, if you guys think of anybody or anybody that's interested in that, let me know, and we'll get that going in the interim. Shannon is being so kind and taking notes and minutes for us.
Thank
Okay.
you, Shannon. Will we open it up for application process just the same as we would a member?
I would think so. I'm going to double check that.
Okay. And we
But I
also
don't know
need-
that we have to do that because I'm not sure.
Okay.
I will double check. In fact, I'm going to email Dan McCrae and ask him how we should proceed with that. Dan is an attorney. Dan is also giving us insight and advice on the TAD, and he's the DDA guru, as I call him. So I will email him and make sure that we're doing that correctly.
Okay. And we'll need to reopen the application for Bill's seat as well, since he resigned.
Correct.
And as we think about that too, Tracy also was the signer of the checks. Her and the president co-signed the checks. So we've got to get that taken care of as well.
Right. Get Andy on the account.
Got to get Andy on the account and then get somebody to work with him as the secretary as well.
Okay. Got it. We are doing, because we are meeting as a board tonight, we are doing our annual volunteer appreciation banquet. We're bringing that back. Obviously, we stopped that because of COVID. We'll be bringing that back March the 2nd at Court on Main from 6:30 to 8. Shannon will send out save the dates to all the board members, and then we'll actually send you a nice physical invitation via snail mail. probably a couple of weeks out, okay? So I think the only address that I need, Andy, I need your address, and Sandy, if you don't mind, I need your physical address as well. We know you live
I
downtown.
live at
but
work, so
I couldn't send it to the office.
either way, I'll get you my personal, so, perfect.
And that's all I have for that.
Okay. Move on to the public comment. I know we've got two in the crowd tonight that's probably for that maybe, but I'd like to make a comment first. I'd like to thank Jerry, Tracy, and Bill for their years of service with DDA. They've done a lot for this community, done a lot for this board, and I just appreciate their service.
Yes. And similar to the city council meeting, we keep the public comment limited to 3 minutes and less for anybody making a public comment. And I'll run the timer.
Perfect. All right. So if we're ready, if y'all, absolutely. I would assume the same. State your name and address. Okay.
Kurt Kraft, 2406 Ridge Lake Drive. I'm here to discuss, actually comment on the project of Butterballs. Since I only have 3 minutes, if I appear direct, do not take any of this personally.
Absolutely.
I only yell at city council. I do not yell at other board members and volunteers because I was one 16 years myself, so y'all can relax. Butterballs, won't go into some of the stuff that the mayor and I are been in a 6-year tussle with online and everything else, but there are some questions that I have that were not answered, and a lot of this was I was 16 years on the development of the other development authority, and just was too busy with that to pay attention to this. But in a nutshell, here they are. When the city transferred to the DDA the responsibility of Butterballs, they transferred a piece of property, and by the way, I have documents that I requisitioned through open records from the city, so this isn't opinions, as the mayor stated, and I would be happy to email those to you. I'll even give you the Cliff Note version, which is 2 pages, and one of them shows the asbestos that was in the building prior to purchase. The other one shows that the, let's see, the asbestos was one, and then the contaminants in the ground was the other. The biggest thing, if I wanted to point out, there was that gap, and then recently we learned that the building was not sound structurally. So there's this, why was if it was structurally unsound, why was a roof put on? Then was there miscommunication from when the city transferred it to y'all as to, because it doesn't make any sense why you would put a $70,000 roof on a building that's not sound. So I'll leave you with that. And then whose project was it between January of 2018, January 1st of 2018, almost to the end of 2020? The records that I showed, the city never transferred the property to the authority as far as like title and stuff. They kept ownership, and I guess maybe it was just a responsibility that was transferred, so I'd need to know that. Also did, other than the expenses, other than the roof, that's the only thing the city so far is saying y'all have spent money on. So if there are any other expenses that were incurred, everything from engineering fees to studies, and it ties into this next thing, was what started all this was the Renaissance plan. And I know that the Carl Vinson Institute did it, but who paid for that? Was that the city, or did that come out of y'all's budget? And you'll probably have to review this, after. As I guess some of you might be new, I think a lot of you have been on the board quite a while, but I'm not going to make the assumption. If you have not read the original sales contract, ask for a PDF of that to see what I'm telling you. Also ask for the soil tests that were performed prior to them handing it over to you. Everything I've said is in there. And again, I'd happy to send you the Cliff Notes. Finally, on the January 11th workshop, around the 31-minute mark, just because of my experience as a chairman for 16 years, this is just me passing this on to you as a board. I want you to see who your friends are on the council, and it starts at about the 31-minute mark, and who is distancing themselves from the Butterballs project. Thank you all very much.
And we'll look into those questions for you. Appreciate that. Uh-huh.
Next, please. If you'll state your name and address for the board, please.
Hi, good evening. Janet Heilman, 44 Maple Valley Drive, Villorica, Georgia. I have 3 questions. At the city council meeting, I had brought up that it might be a good idea to have symposiums on some of the things that we're doing. A lot of the information is really overwhelming for homeowners, especially when hardly anyone attends. And I had suggested that Dr. Nancy Mims, she had done this before COVID. I don't know if you all are familiar with that. You, Michael, I think are. And I think it's really important to educate the people of Villorica, just have these symposiums, talk about the different projects that Tom's working on, kind of just, capsulize it so that you can do an overview for people. I think it's just so important. Since he brought up Butterball, I do have one question on that. The $32,000 or $1,000 or around that amount, that was used for like an architectural study, I believe, to see what purpose that building could provide or have, the best suited, what it's best suited for. Where could I find more information on that, for what ideas were discussed for that? I mean, I know that we were thinking about it as a welcome center, but, for $32,000, I just kind of like to know what all was discussed. So if I could be directed to that, where to find that, I'd appreciate that. The last thing is on the stuff that Tom Barber said, the one property, I guess, on the corner, it's in my notes, but they bought that or they're going to buy that. Are there any other homeowners that are going to be displaced or their property bought, or is everything going to be basically the same with a lot of these projects going in?
In the TAD, Fuqua bought a single lot with a single house on it.
That's it?
To place his gas station. I don't know of any other people being displaced at this time.
Okay. And I guess my only other concern is, the traffic that all this is going to bring to the city. I mean, that's really my big concern. I live on the south side, but it's a real big concern. I mean, even with, the roundabouts and things like that and traffic lights that they're considering. I mean, do we have a study going on right now as traffic, I see the those monitors.
The city has gotten in the habit of requiring developers to do a traffic study and present remediation mechanisms for increased traffic. So that's all part of the development that they did.
Okay. So that's at their cost?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, the city helps too, but it's because GDOT gets involved in some of them, because if it's on 61 or 78 but.
Okay. And then how do I find out about the $32,000? Does someone get back to me, or how does that work?
Y'all will get back to her.
Yeah.
Tom?
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds like the guy that just left, you may want to talk to him. I think he knows more about it than we do. But
Well, I was hoping that he was going to stay, but I'm sure he's got things to do. Okay,
Yeah.
that does it. Thank you.
yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
And I was going to let him know too, and I'll let you know too, that, I mean, this board is pretty much all brand new.
Yeah.
Like, I've been on for a few years, but other than that,
Yeah.
pretty much all brand new. So
You're probably the longest serving member.
Oh, so everybody's getting caught up.
we're all getting caught up on things. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is it just 4 people?
No, there's the two
I mean,
on
5 people.
Zoom.
I meant 5. Yeah, she's on that. So
And
it's
there's
five people.
And there's one spot that we're going to be looking to fill soon.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
All right, that will conclude public comment. Any items we need to add to the future agenda, please? Are they hearing us on Zoom as well? Do they have any?
Do y'all have any things you want to add for future agenda?
You're muted.
What did you say, Mari?
I said I personally don't at the moment.
Okay, perfect. All right.
And then Ellen said she's good.
All right, perfect. We'll move on to executive session. So we will have to ask her to leave. Yes, ma'am?
Do we have items for executive session? Okay. Yes, ma'am.